having to like worry about all the things all the time, like the burden,
Right. Sure.
Sure. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about your template. So you mentioned template, and so a lot of people template is just like routing, but for some people it's a bit more heavy-handed. I'm hopefully going to talk to Billy Decker soon, who I know is like the king of templates.
Yeah,
so
Nashville guy.
where on the continuum of just routing to Billy Decker is your template?
Well, yeah. So I'm not. I think Billy is more like opening up a Pro Tools project file and bringing his stuff in. Being a Cubase guy, it's a little trickier. Usually I'm just taking stems or raw audio files and bringing them into like a brand new project file. But yeah, so what I'm doing is it's primarily, I don't have many audio tracks. Most of that's all getting imported in. It's primarily, there's a couple stereo audio tracks at the beginning. There's what I call like an aux in, so I can record like an iPhone directly into my project file. If I want to quickly snag like a clip of something from Spotify, I can just record it directly into the mix project file. And then there's a rough mix stereo audio file as well, where I'll bring in the most recent rough mix. And then from there, that's kind of where I'm importing all of my audio files that I'll be mixing, and if some things need to go to certain groups or buses, that's kind of Ben will set that up where if it's 3 tracks of like one BGV part, then he'll sum all those into a single stereo bus. And so a lot of that happens when he's getting it prepped. And then from there, like, it's when all the good stuff happens. That's like the parallel stuff. There's probably the parallel kind of compression, saturation kind of stuff. My texture faders, which I use quite a bit. And then from there, it's all my effects returns. I probably have 25 or 30 returns that are just things that I've like fine-tuned over the years that I love. A couple different plates and some more synthetic reverbs and springs and chambers and a couple different rooms for certain things. I've got a room for strings I like, a room for piano, a room for percussion, some drum room, snare verb kind of stuff that I like. I've got lots of delays. I've got, I'm trying to think of everything off the top of my head. I've got some Sound Toys Echo Boy options. I've got Galaxy Echo, which is like the Space Echo. And there's, choruses, some motion-based stuff, Brower motion, some auto panning things, some swirly stuff. So yeah, that's where I'm getting all my space and delays and movement and all that are from those 25 or 30 returns there. And then from there it goes to what I call like food groups, or my maybe some people maybe call them like sub mixes. I don't know exactly what other people, I call them food groups. They're basically just buses at the end that everything kind of eventually gets funneled into. There's a lead vocal, BGV, drum, bass, keys, effects. Probably 10 or so buses that everything gets kind of summed into. And then from there, then it goes into the master bus, which, is something that I've fine-tuned over the years and try to just not mess with that too much anymore. I like what it does. And I guess we can even go through specific plugins and things if you want.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to hear what's on your stereo bus. But I actually want to go back after that to the texture knobs, because that sounds like a secret sauce situation.
Well, maybe. I don't do as much parallel as a lot of people, actually. I do a little here and there, but I do like to have it available, and so where I'm not having to set it all up, at least.
So it's just like the texture channels are like parallel compression channels.
Yeah, real like heavy-handed kind of 1176 stuff. Maybe like some more aggressive EQing with that as well, or one is kind of a devil lock scenario of sorts. Off the top of my head, I can't remember all. This is primarily just more aggressive compression and things like devil lock, decapitator, saturators and compressors for the most part, that I can just, if I want to send something there, just to blend in a little bit more, to bring in a little bit more intensity or texture, I can do that with one of those 5
Does
or 6
that get
channels.
Routed through the FX end, or does it get rerouted
it
to
depends.
like whatever?
If usually I'm using it for drums, so it's usually just going to go to the drum bus as well.
Right.
And not much happens on those food groups at the end of my template. There's the soft tube tape plugin is on each of those, I believe, and there's like a little bit of widening that happens on the effects bus. That's where I like to do a lot of my stereo kind of widening of things is on that effects bus, and then maybe a little bit on the guitars and keys bus at times, because I don't like to really do much widening on the actual master bus itself.
Oh, it's a stereo bus.
Yeah. So and then to the into that master bus is starts with. I'm trying to think. I'm a big fan of SSL bus compression, so everything kind of gets fed through that, and then from there, it's been the same way for so many years. It's like I should just be visually in my head. From there, it goes to I guess the MIG DSP, the ML. What is the ML 4000? I think I know Chad Blake's been using it for a long time. It's like a multi-band compressor and expander and a limiter, but I use it for a little bit of compression and expansion, and then I was trying to think of what else is involved from there. Pro L2 limiter, Oxford inflator then comes after that. That's the gist of it. There's one or two things I'd have to pull it up to it ends up being about 6 different plugins, I think, but those are like the ones that are doing most of the heavy lifting.
Totally. The SSL thing is classic. Are you totally in the box?
Totally in the box since the late 90s, like I mentioned. I mean, I've started with Cakewalk, and then the Nuendo thing, and then Cubase. So I've always been a big fan of in the box. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's great for recalling a project 4 years later. I'm a big fan of like jumping around to many different songs, sometimes in a day, maybe spend an hour on something and then taking some time away from it and coming back to it, the next day, and working kind of in chunks. So yeah, I don't know. I've always liked working in the box, especially now. I think it's the best time to be in the box, just because there's so many great plugins out there now, and it was just always more economical, getting started. I couldn't just go out and buy like a bunch of LA2As and 1176s and all that. So, thanks to Universal Audio.
Dangerous summing box or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, and funny, my 2 favorite mixers are in the box, guys. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think you need all that gear to make great sounding records.
I don't think so. From all the people that I've interviewed, I know that's definitely not true.
Yeah.
Like, you definitely don't need to be out of the box. Obviously, there are some amazing mixers who go out of the box.
Sure.
But there are just as many amazing mixers in the box these days,
Yep.
I think once Andrew Sheps did it, everyone said, "Okay, I guess we could do this."
Yeah.
Right. That was like the big thing for a lot of people.
Yeah. I love Serban and Chad Blake, and they've both been in the box
classic
guys. Yeah. So
something I've been talking about on the podcast that somebody brought up was that Serban delivers his mixes to mastering, like basically however slammed the artist approved of it.
Yep.
And I was thinking about this as you were talking about the Pro L2 and the Oxford inflator. Is that something that you're abiding by? Is this your kind of thought process when it comes to finishing a mix and sending it off to mastering?
Yeah, no, I mean, I send everything to mastering. I don't change anything at the end. I don't bring the limiter back a little bit. It's if it feels good to me in my room and the client really likes it, then I'm gonna just send it, and it's usually never an issue with most of the mastering guys that I work with. They usually can still get a few more dB out of it. It's not like crazy hot. It's hot, but it's not hot, So they still have a little bit of room on their end to do a couple of things. Usually there's not much that mastered. There's like the last few percent, a little, a few tenths of a dB here or there, a little bit of compression or a little bit of limiting, and that's it. It usually sounds like what I sent, only a little bit better. And that's the mastering engineers I typically like to work with. So. The ones that aren't super heavy-handed.
Right. Yeah. Totally. You want the integrity of your mix to come back. Right?
I do.
Like there's, it's been slaved away so much. You don't want to expect. You don't want something that's completely different than that.
Right.
I mean, like I feel that way. Some people like the mastering engineer to kind of go ahead and do their thing, but I definitely want my mastering engineer to kind of just give me like a slightly better version of
I mean, if
what the mix was.
All those hours,
it's intentional.
And it's like, exactly, very intentional. It's like by the time I print it, it's I am obsessed with where it's at. The client really loves it. They've like done the revisions with me. Maybe we've gone through 3 or 4 rounds, and it's exactly the way we want it. It's like we don't want it. We're not hoping to hear something completely different once it comes back from mastering. That's not what we're looking for.
And it's amazing how much a mastering engineer can actually mess up the record.
Oh yeah,
just by like overdoing it. It's
for sure.
Like I know it's like the last 2%, but it could really, if it's not done well.
I think relationships with mastering engineers are really important for sure. I mean, the one that I work with the most, I've been working with for 15 years. I mean, he just knows what he's going to get, and so he does probably 80% at least of the projects. But there's like 4 or 5 mastering engineers that I work with on a regular basis, and it's usually like project dependent. If it's a pop thing, like there's a couple names that I really like for that. If it's more organic, then Doug, like the guy who I mentioned that I've been working with for about 15 years, he like does that really, really well. And he's more of like an analog guy that'll bring more, just brings more color into things. So yeah, it just depends on the project as to who I'm going to hit up when it comes time to master. And sometimes the client has a name. Usually it's like, hey, who do you think would be good for it? Can you recommend someone? So it depends.
Totally. And I've been mastering with Connor Salmoral, and what I love about our relationship is just like how easy it is for me to just be like, yo, you didn't do this how I expected it. Can you like redo it? And be like, yeah, I got it.
Yep.
And like, but like the communication is always there and open. And I think that's the most important thing with a mastering engineer.
For sure.
And I'm already at a point where I'm like, I just want to include the mastering rate and my mixing rate and just pay my mastering engineer so that I don't have to have that discussion anymore of like, why is this important? Like, let me, or like, oh, why don't you just master it, or whatever it is, whatever it could end up being.
Yep.
It's just like, let's just include it all in the same package and let me deal with sending the funds over.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, I'm a big believer in always getting someone else to master. I rarely ever master anything that I mix or produce, just because I love
except for the sauce segment today, right?
Yeah, that's the one. Well, that was what we call a low budget thing. So it was just like, we'll make it work, and actually, I was like, okay, maybe if I needed to, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but. But typically I like to get someone else's ears on it at the very end, and try to find a couple little things that maybe I overlooked, for sure. So, and their rooms are even better than mine, and their monitoring is even better than mine, and they just so much comes through. They know, like, they have this like template, and if it's like not kind of fitting into this template, then it's like, oh yeah, I need to do this and this, and it's just they kind of help average it out in a way, and so that really is important to me, to have someone that can kind of do that.
Totally. Wait, so let's go back to I mentioned the vocal tones. What are you usually doing on vocals? What is that? What's that approach?
Yeah.
What are you thinking about?
Gosh, with vocals, I used to do too much to vocals. I feel like, especially when it came to EQ. I am way more of I try to be a bit more of a minimalist now when it comes to vocals. I use way less plugins on my vocals than I used to, and it sounds better. I'm a big fan of Softtube's Console 1. I got that back in the fall, and it's like a controller that controls a plugin, and there's a lot of different models. The one that I use right now is the SSL 9000J, and so that's on almost every track in my mix. It's just it's my way of turning turning Cubase basically into a console, and it's just nice to be tactile and not, I don't know, looking at the screen all the time and just kind of looking down and turning knobs until it sounds right. It kind of helps me not, it keeps me from using my eyes a little bit too much. But so that's always going to be on the vocal, just because that EQ just sounds phenomenal. And then the filters are really great, and maybe I'll use a little bit of compression there, but that's kind of my broad stroke EQ if I want broad stroke EQ. If I'm wanting surgical EQ, FabFilter, Pro Q3,
all day, every day.
Yeah, so between like those two EQs, that musical broad stroke thing and then the really surgical thing, I can do any EQ that I need with those two. And for de-essing, I've got a bunch of de-essers. I guess I usually either use the Fab Filter one or the Renaissance de-esser, or I'm trying to think of some of the others. Sometimes we even use a multi-band compressor as well to get that job done. The Fab Filter, was it the Pro MB? Other than that, I'm trying to think what else is in the chain. I'm a big fan of 1176s for vocals.